What if I told you that the course of human history might not be as straightforward as we've always believed? Picture this: ancient engineers working centuries or even millennia ago, designing structures and machines with such precision and vision that they still leave modern experts scratching their heads in wonder. We often imagine the past as a time of simplicity, stone tools, basic agriculture, and slow progress. But what if that perception is hiding something extraordinary? What if some civilizations possessed knowledge and technology so advanced that it seems to defy logic, almost as if they had a glimpse into the future? This isn't just speculation, it's a mystery woven into the very fabric of our world's greatest historical sites and artifacts. From massive stone monuments aligned perfectly with the stars, to intricate devices that seem to predict celestial events with astonishing accuracy, there are blueprints from the ancient world that challenge everything we thought we knew about human innovation. These aren't just accidents or lucky guesses, they're evidence of something deeper, a sophistication that hints at lost sciences, forgotten wisdom, or perhaps even influences we have yet to fully understand. It raises questions that stir the imagination and invite us to look at history not as a linear story, but as a rich tapestry full of unexplained brilliance. Today, we're setting out on a journey to explore 25 of these astounding historical blueprints, designed so advanced for their time that they seem almost impossible. Together, we'll travel across continents and eras, from the soaring pyramids of Egypt to the cryptic machinery of ancient Greece, from South America's mind-boggling stonework to inventions in Asia that were centuries ahead of their time. This is more than a list, it's an invitation to wonder, to question, and to rediscover the awe-inspiring capabilities of those who came before us. So settle in, open your mind, and get ready to see the past in a whole new light. Our journey begins not in a laboratory or a library, but at the bottom of the sea, where a shipwreck off the coast of a small Greek island held a secret that would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. In the year 1900, sponge divers exploring the murky depths near Antikythera stumbled upon the ruins of a Roman-era cargo ship. Among the statues and artifacts they recovered was a lump of corroded bronze and wood that seemed unremarkable at first glance. It was set aside for nearly a year, just another curious find from the deep. But when an archaeologist finally took a closer look, he noticed something extraordinary: intricate gear wheels embedded within the rock-hard corrosion. This was no ordinary piece of scrap. It was a machine, one of breathtaking complexity, now known as the Antikythera Mechanism. What researchers would eventually piece together through painstaking analysis and advanced imaging techniques like X-ray tomography is that this device was an analog computer of stunning sophistication. Its front face featured dials and pointers that displayed the movements of the sun, the moon, and likely the 5 known planets across the zodiac. A small, hand-operated crank set the entire system in motion, allowing the user to calculate celestial positions for any given date with remarkable precision. One of its most brilliant features was its ability to predict lunar and solar eclipses, not just as singular events, but in cycles that repeated over decades. It even modeled the irregular orbit of the moon, accounting for its elliptical path with a clever system of gears that created a subtle speeding up and slowing down in its display. The true wonder of the Antikythera mechanism lies in its timing. Scientific consensus dates its construction to around the 2nd century BCE, a period we often visualize through the lens of simple tools and philosophical thought. Yet this device exhibits a level of mechanical engineering and astronomical understanding that historians believed was impossible for another 1,400 years. Gears with triangular teeth were cut with precision, and the miniaturization of its components suggests a long tradition of gear making that we have no other evidence for. It represents a peak of technological achievement that was then completely lost to history, a single surviving glimpse into a world of knowledge that vanished beneath the waves. Who built it? The leading theory points to the brilliant minds of the Hellenistic world, perhaps inspired by the great inventor Archimedes himself, though he lived a century earlier. The device embodies a fusion of Babylonian astronomical data and Greek mechanical theory, a masterpiece of interdisciplinary science. Its very existence implies that this was not a one-off miracle, but likely a product of a school of instrument makers, suggesting other such devices were in use. Their absence from the archaeological record only deepens the mystery. The Antikythera Mechanism stands as a profound and humbling reminder that our historical narrative is incomplete, that pockets of advanced knowledge could flourish and then disappear, leaving behind only cryptic fragments for us to decipher. But if a device like the Antikythera Mechanism forces us to rewrite the history of mechanics, our next discovery challenges the very timeline of electrical science. In the 1930s, during excavations of a 2,000-year-old Parthian village just outside modern-day Baghdad, a team of archaeologists uncovered a series of rather ordinary-looking clay jars. They were nothing remarkable at first glance, each about the size of a tall vase sealed with an asphalt plug. But it was what was hidden inside that would ignite a debate that continues to this day. Through the asphalt stopper, each jar contained an iron rod surrounded by a rolled copper cylinder. To the German director of the Baghdad Museum, Wilhelm Koenig, these objects didn't look like ritual items or simple storage containers. They looked for all the world like the components of a primitive electric cell. The theory is as straightforward as it is revolutionary. If these jars were filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, a chemical reaction would occur. The acidic electrolyte would interact with the two different metals, the iron and the copper, creating a flow of electrons, a small but measurable electric current. In fact, when modern researchers built replicas based on the original finds, that is exactly what happened. The jars produced a low-voltage current, typically around 1 volt, perfectly capable of generating a small shock or a faint tingling sensation. The evidence seemed compelling. These ancient people may have understood the basic principles of electrochemistry 2 millennia before Alessandro Volta invented the modern battery in the 19th century. The true mystery, however, is not whether these objects could generate electricity, but what the Parthians, or perhaps the earlier Sasanians who also occupied the region, would have done with it. The most tantalizing hypothesis involves electroplating, the process of using an electric current to bind a thin layer of a precious metal, like gold, onto the surface of a less valuable object, like silver. Several contemporary artifacts from the same region show evidence of very fine gold plating, a technique that is incredibly difficult to achieve with mercury-based fire gilding. Could a bank of these Baghdad batteries, connected together to increase their voltage, have been used by ancient artisans to create these gilded masterpieces? Yet many mainstream historians remain deeply skeptical, pointing to the complete absence of any wires, connectors, or other evidence that would suggest an electrical circuit. The alternative explanations are less futuristic but perhaps more plausible. The jars may have been used for sacred or medicinal purposes. The slight electrical charge could have produced a mysterious numbing or vibrating sensation, making them perfect for use in religious ceremonies to demonstrate a priest's connection to the divine, or even as an early form of electrotherapy to treat pain. Without any written records or unambiguous archaeological context, the Baghdad Battery remains an enigma. It stands as a powerful testament to the fact that an object's simplest explanation is not always its truest story, and that the ancient world may have been buzzing with secrets we are only now beginning to sense. From the enigmatic jars of Baghdad, we journey south to the sun-baked sands of Egypt, to a temple that holds one of the most visually compelling and hotly debated mysteries of the ancient world. Within the complex of Hathor at Dendera, on a wall in a secluded crypt, there is a series of stone carvings that seem to defy all conventional explanation. They show massive, elongated objects reminiscent of giant, translucent light bulbs. Inside each bulb, a snake-like form stretches along its length, a detail that looks uncannily like the filament in a modern incandescent bulb. This serpent is held at one end by a supporting arm, and the entire bulb appears to be connected by a cable to a box upon which a deity is kneeling, and what could be interpreted as an insulating pole. To the modern eye, the resemblance to an electrical lighting system is nothing short of astonishing. The theory proposed by some alternative historians is as dramatic as the carvings themselves. They suggest that these are not mere symbolic art, but literal blueprints for a sophisticated technology, that the ancient Egyptians might have possessed and utilized electric light. Proponents of this idea point to the absence of soot stains in many deep interior tombs and temples like the pyramids as potential evidence. How, they ask, could intricate artwork have been completed in total darkness or with the constant smoke of torches and oil lamps without leaving any residue? The Dendera carvings, they argue, provide the answer, a form of arc lighting or a primitive light bulb powered by some lost means, perhaps even a version of the Baghdad Battery. In this interpretation, the snake represents the glowing filament, the supporting arm is the light socket, the cable is an insulated wire, and the box is a power source or generator. Mainstream Egyptology and archaeology, however, offer a profoundly different and deeply symbolic interpretation. They identify the object not as a light bulb, but as a representation of a cosmic moment from Egyptian mythology, the birth of the sun god within a lotus flower. The serpent is not a filament, but the deity Harsomptus, an aspect of Horus, emerging from the primeval waters of Nun. The cable is seen as a stylized lotus stem, and the box is a jed pillar, a symbol of stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. The entire scene is thought to depict a spiritual journey and a creation myth, where the snake deity represents the latent energy and life force coming into being, an illumination of a divine and cosmic nature, not an electrical one. This stark contrast in interpretation highlights the core challenge of understanding ancient cultures. We are separated from them by millennia, viewing their world through the lens of our own advanced technology. It is a natural human tendency to see familiar patterns, to project our own understanding onto the past. The light bulb theory is a captivating narrative because it connects directly to our modern experience. The mythological explanation requires us to step into a completely different worldview, one where symbols held immense power and stories of gods explained the fundamental workings of the universe. The absence of any physical evidence for such electrical devices, no bulbs, no wires, no generators found anywhere in Egypt, strongly supports the symbolic view. The carvings at Dendera stand as a powerful reminder that the ancient mind conceived of power and light not in terms of volts and amps, but through stories of serpents, lotuses, and the enduring strength of the gods. Leaving the symbolic carvings of Dendera behind, we travel across the Atlantic to a vast, arid plateau in southern Peru, where an entire landscape was transformed into a sprawling canvas. Here, on the plains of Nazca, an ancient civilization created one of the most visually stunning and perplexing wonders of the ancient world. Etched into the dark, sun-baked desert pavement are hundreds of enormous geoglyphs, lines, shapes, and figures so massive they defy comprehension from the ground. It is only from the sky that their true majesty is revealed. A colossal hummingbird with a beak stretching into the distance, a sprawling monkey with an intricately coiled tail, a perfectly symmetrical spider, and a humanoid figure nicknamed the astronaut, seeming to wave from the hillside. These are the Nazca lines, a gallery of giants whose artists could never have seen their own completed work. The sheer scale and precision of these designs is what first captures the imagination. Some of the straight lines run for miles, arrows straight across the uneven terrain, while the animal figures can span over 300 feet. The method of their creation, however, was deceptively simple. The Nazca people, who flourished between 200 BC and 600 CE, created them by removing the top layer of reddish-brown, iron oxide-coated pebbles to reveal the lighter-colored, sandy soil beneath. This contrast created the visible lines. The true engineering marvel lies in their ability to execute such precise, large-scale designs without the ability to view them from above. They likely used a system of ropes, stakes, and simple mathematics to plot out the figures from key vantage points on the surrounding foothills, scaling up smaller models with an incredible degree of accuracy that has stood the test of centuries. This leads us to the central, haunting question: why, for a people without flight, what was the purpose of creating art that only gods or birds could see? One of the most enduring theories connects the lines to astronomy and water, the most precious resource in the desert. Some researchers argue that many of the lines align with celestial bodies like the sun, moon, and certain stars, potentially serving as a giant agricultural calendar to mark seasonal changes and water cycles. The animal figures themselves may have represented constellations or water deities. The spider, for instance, is a recurring symbol of rain in Andean cultures, and the hummingbird is associated with the arrival of life-giving water. In this view, the lines were a sacred map, a way of communicating with the gods to petition for the vital rains that sustained their society. Another compelling theory suggests the geoglyphs were pathways for ritual processions. The Nazca culture is known for its elaborate ceremonial life, and these wide, cleared lines could have been walked by priests and pilgrims as part of religious rites. Offerings found at the endpoints of some lines support this idea, indicating they were sites of veneration. The act of walking the lines may have been a form of devotional practice, a physical prayer traced across the body of the earth itself. From this perspective, the experience was for the participants on the ground, not for any unseen audience above. The journey was the purpose, not the final image. Of course, the most famous and sensational hypothesis is that the lines were landing strips or signals for extraterrestrial visitors. This idea, popularized in the mid-20th century, captures the imagination because it offers a simple, if otherworldly, answer to the puzzle of their visibility. While there is no archaeological evidence to support this theory, its persistence speaks to the profound sense of mystery the lines evoke. They challenge our assumptions about the capabilities of ancient peoples, pushing some to look for answers beyond our world. Ultimately, the Nazca lines stand as a powerful testament to human ingenuity and spiritual longing. They represent a civilization's deep desire to make its mark on the world, to communicate with the forces of nature, and to create something so immense and enduring that its message, though enigmatic, would never be forgotten. Yet even the vast, mysterious canvas of the Nazca Desert pales in comparison to the sheer, awe-inspiring ambition of a single structure that has dominated the Egyptian landscape for millennia. When we think of ancient mysteries, our minds almost invariably turn to the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is the sole surviving wonder of the ancient world, a monument so familiar it almost feels commonplace. But to view it as just a big pile of old rocks is to miss the breathtaking, almost unnerving complexity hidden within its colossal form. This is not merely a tomb. It is a precision-engineered machine carved in stone, a blueprint of such sophistication that it continues to defy easy explanation. Let's start with its famous orientation. The base of the Great Pyramid is a near-perfect square, with its sides aligned almost exactly to the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The margin of error is astonishingly slight, a mere fraction of a single degree. This is an incredible feat of surveying, one that would be challenging to replicate even with modern GPS technology. How did the ancient Egyptians achieve such precision? They likely used the stars, perhaps tracking the movements of a particular star around the celestial pole, or using the method of the equinox, but the exact technique remains one of their lost secrets. This perfect alignment suggests a profound and practical understanding of astronomy, not just for myth, but for mathematics and engineering on a truly grand scale. But the true mysteries lie inside. The pyramid's interior is a labyrinth of passages, chambers, and shafts that seem to serve a purpose far beyond simple burial. The journey inward begins with the descending passage, but it's the ascending passage that leads to the heart of the structure, the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber. The Grand Gallery itself is a marvel, a soaring corbelled vault over 28 feet high. Its purpose is unclear. Was it a grand hall for ceremonial processions, a counterweight chamber for raising massive stone blocks, or perhaps something else entirely? It leads to the King's Chamber, a room built entirely from massive blocks of red granite, a stone quarried from over 500 miles away. At the center of this chamber sits the object of endless speculation, the granite coffer. This is not a sarcophagus in the traditional sense, as it is far too large to have been brought into the chamber after the pyramid was completed. It must have been placed there during construction. Its lid is missing and has never been found. The coffer is made from a single, enormous block of granite, and its interior is hollowed out with a precision that suggests the use of tools far beyond simple copper chisels and stone hammers. The corners are perfectly square, the surfaces incredibly smooth, and the tolerances between the sides are razor thin. Some engineers have argued that achieving this with the tools we know the Egyptians had would be extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, leading to theories about lost machining techniques or even more advanced tools that have not survived. Then there are the so-called air shafts. These narrow, square tunnels extend from both the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber deep within the pyramid, angling upwards towards the outer faces. For a long time, their function was a complete mystery. Were they truly for ventilation, as their modern name implies? That seems unlikely, as they were sealed at both ends for centuries. A more compelling theory, supported by robotic exploration, is that they were astronomical in purpose. The southern shaft from the King's Chamber is aligned precisely with the belt of the constellation Orion, which was associated with the god Osiris. The northern shaft targets the circumpolar star Alpha Draconis, a star that never set and was associated with eternity. These were not air vents, they were likely spiritual conduits designed to channel the soul of the deceased pharaoh directly to these eternal, imperishable stars. The construction techniques themselves are the subject of fierce debate. How were over 2 million stone blocks, some weighing up to 80 tons, quarried, transported, and raised to such incredible heights? The mainstream theory involves ramps, sleds, water, and vast amounts of human labor, but the logistical challenges are staggering. Alternative theories propose the use of sound levitation, lost chemical knowledge to soften stone, or even more advanced machinery. The truth is, we simply do not know. The pyramid stands as a silent, monumental challenge to our modern arrogance. It forces us to admit that an ancient civilization possessed a body of knowledge, a blend of engineering, astronomy, and perhaps a science we no longer understand, that allowed them to create a structure that is, in many ways, still beyond our full comprehension. It is the ultimate historical blueprint, a permanent question mark carved in limestone against the sky. While the pyramids represent a physical mystery of stone and alignment, our next blueprint is a puzzle of ink and vellum, a book that has defied every attempt to read it for over 5 centuries. Imagine discovering a manuscript entirely written in a language no one on Earth can understand, illustrated with plants that don't exist and cosmological diagrams that seem to map unknown realms. This is the enduring enigma of the Voynich manuscript, carbon dated to the early 15th century in northern Italy. This 240-page book is named after Wilfrid Voynich, the Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912. From that moment, it has captivated and confounded the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and historians, earning its reputation as the world's most mysterious book. The manuscript's text is its primary mystery, written in an elegant but entirely unknown script. It flows smoothly from left to right with what appear to be words and sentences, suggesting a genuine language with structure and rules. Statistical analysis of the text shows patterns consistent with natural languages, such as Zipf's law, which governs word frequency. Yet, despite over a century of effort by professional and amateur codebreakers, including teams from both world wars who successfully cracked enemy ciphers, not a single word of the Voynich has been conclusively deciphered. Proposed solutions have ranged from a coded form of Latin or Hebrew to a long-lost Asian language, or even an elaborate hoax, but each theory crumbles under scrutiny. The text remains a perfect cipher, a locked door for which no one has found the key. If the writing is perplexing, the illustrations are utterly bewildering. The book is divided into several distinct sections, each more strange than the last. The largest section is herbal, filled with detailed paintings of plants that are completely unidentifiable. They have the general structure of real flora, roots, stems, leaves, and flowers, but the combinations are fantastical and do not match any known species on Earth. This has led to theories that the author was depicting unknown botanical knowledge, perhaps from a lost civilization, or illustrating the ingredients for alchemical recipes, where plants were symbolic of chemical processes rather than literal specimens. Another section is astronomical, featuring circular diagrams that resemble charts of the cosmos. These aren't simple representations of the moon and stars. They are intricate, multi-layered diagrams with suns, moons, and strange, cell-like structures that seem to depict a complex and unfamiliar universe. One particularly famous series of illustrations shows a series of nested, circular diagrams populated by naked women bathing in interconnected tubes and pools, a section often called the biological or balneological fold. These images are unlike anything in known medieval science, suggesting a system of biology or cosmology that is entirely alien to our historical understanding of the period. The advanced and seemingly anachronistic nature of this knowledge is what fuels the most speculative theories. Could the Voynich manuscript be a record of lost alchemical wisdom, written in a code to protect its powerful secrets from the uninitiated? Alchemists were known to use complex symbolism to conceal their work in transforming matter. Or does its otherworldly content point to something even more extraordinary? The unearthly plants and strange cosmos have, for some, suggested the possibility of extraterrestrial influence, a guidebook from another world, or a human attempt to document an encounter with a non-human intelligence. While these ideas are compelling to the imagination, most scholars lean toward a more earthly, if no less fascinating, explanation that it could be a unique product of a singular, brilliant, or perhaps deluded mind. It might represent a constructed language, an early experiment in artificial intelligence, or the work of a creator who blended known science with personal myth to produce a work of profound and intentional mystery. The Voynich manuscript, therefore, stands not as a blueprint for a machine, but for a complete and unknown worldview, a silent testament to the fact that some secrets from the past may choose to keep themselves hidden forever. Leaving behind the cryptic pages of the Voynich, we now journey to the high Andes of Peru, to a site of such staggering physical presence that it challenges our understanding of ancient engineering with its sheer, overwhelming mass. Perched on a hill overlooking the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman presents a spectacle of stonework so advanced, so precise, that it barely seems the work of human hand. From a distance, its zigzagging walls look like the colossal teeth of a stone serpent, coiled protectively around the sacred city. But it is only up close that the true, mind-bending genius of its construction reveals itself. These are not simple walls of stacked rock. They are a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle crafted on a monumental scale, a masterpiece of engineering that has withstood centuries of earthquakes and conquest. The most awe-inspiring feature is the precision of the stone fitting. The Incas constructed these walls using a technique known as ashlar masonry, where massive polygonal blocks are cut to fit together without the use of any mortar. But to call it a fit is a profound understatement. The stones, some weighing well over 100 tons, are carved with complex, multi-angled faces that interlock perfectly with their neighbors on all sides. The joins are so incredibly tight that you cannot slide a single piece of paper, let alone a knife blade, between them. This isn't just about creating a strong bond. This precision was the Incas' secret to seismic survival. During an earthquake, while a rigid wall would crack and crumble, these intricately fitted stones actually dance. They shift and settle against one another, absorbing and redistributing the immense energy, and then settle back into place once the trembling stops. It is an ancient form of anti-seismic technology that modern engineers still admire. This leads to the two great mysteries that have baffled experts for generations. How did they cut these stones, and how did they move them? The andesite rock used is notoriously hard, far tougher than the copper and bronze tools the Incas are known to have had. The mainstream theory suggests they used harder stones as hammers and patiently pounded and abraded the blocks into shape over countless hours. Yet, the surfaces often exhibit a remarkable smoothness and consistency, with curious features like small, pockmarked holes or precise, shallow depressions that some researchers argue could be evidence of a more advanced lost technique. Perhaps they had discovered a method to soften the stone using plant acids, a theory supported by local legends, though no definitive proof has ever been found. The mystery of the cutting is only matched by the puzzle of transportation. The quarry for these gigantic blocks was located over a mile away across rugged, mountainous terrain. Without the wheel, without draft animals stronger than the llama, how was it done? The accepted idea involves an army of laborers using ropes, logs, and earthen ramps, a testament to incredible communal effort and logistical skill. But the visual of a 200-ton boulder, the weight of a small whale, being inched up a mountainside by human muscle alone, remains a breathtaking, almost incomprehensible feat. The purpose of Sacsayhuaman adds another layer to its mystery. Spanish conquistadors labeled it a fortress, and its formidable, towering walls certainly fit that description. Yet, its design and location suggest it was far more. The complex was also a major religious temple, a place for ceremonies dedicated to the sun god Inti. Its zigzag walls are thought to represent the lightning bolts of the deity Ilapa, and its alignment with celestial events suggests a deep astronomical function. It was likely a multi-purpose center, a military stronghold, a spiritual hub, and a grand symbol of Inca power and ingenuity, all rolled into one. The site, therefore, is more than just a collection of rocks. It is a physical manifesto of a worldview that saw no separation between the spiritual and the practical, between honoring the gods and demonstrating supreme engineering prowess. The stones of Sacsayhuaman are a silent, enduring language, telling a story of a civilization that could seemingly bend stone to its will, leaving behind a puzzle that continues to humble all who stand before it. From a fortress of immovable stone, we turn now to a weapon of unstoppable fire, a liquid terror that defended an empire for centuries and whose secrets vanished into the smoke of history. Picture the scene. The year 678, a massive Arab fleet lays siege to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. The outnumbered Byzantine navy is cornered. Then from the decks of their Draman warships, they unleash a nightmare. Tubes known as siphons spew a mysterious liquid stream across the water's surface. The instant this fluid touches the enemy ships, it ignites into a roaring, uncontrollable inferno. But this is no ordinary fire. It cannot be extinguished with water. In fact, water only makes it rage more fiercely. It clings to everything it touches: wood, sails, and human skin, burning with such intense heat that it seems to boil the very sea itself. The Arab fleet is utterly annihilated. This was the devastating debut of Greek fire, a technological superweapon so advanced its formula remains one of history's greatest lost secrets. The true power of Greek fire, known to the Byzantines as sea fire or liquid fire, lay in its terrifying and unique properties. Contemporary accounts describe it as a sticky, glutinous substance that adhered to any surface it was projected upon. Its most fearsome characteristic was its apparent immunity to water. Sailors who attempted to douse the flames with buckets of seawater only succeeded in spreading the blaze further. Some sources even suggest that the fire could be reignited by water long after it appeared to be out. This has led modern chemists to propose that its key ingredient was likely crude oil or naphtha, a volatile petroleum product mixed with other combustible agents like quicklime, which generates heat upon contact with water, or saltpeter, a key component of gunpowder. The exact mixture created a form of ancient napalm, a chemical incendiary that gave the Byzantine navy an almost supernatural advantage in naval combat. The delivery system for this hellish substance was as ingenious as the formula itself. The primary weapon was the siphon, a pressurized bronze tube mounted on the prow or deck of a warship. These were not simple flamethrowers, they were complex machines, likely employing pumps and a heating mechanism to pressurize and eject the viscous liquid. A hypocaust or furnace below deck may have been used to heat the mixture, making it easier to pump, while a force pump or bellows system then projected it through a nozzle. At the nozzle's tip, a permanent flame or a lit torch would instantly ignite the stream as it jetted forth. Operators were protected by a large, swiveling bronze shield, and the entire apparatus could be aimed like a modern weapon, casting a jet of fire over a significant distance. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. To an enemy sailor, it would have seemed as if the Byzantines had tamed a dragon and weaponized its breath. The secret of Greek fire's composition was arguably more valuable to the empire than gold. Its invention is credited to a Syrian engineer and architect named Kallinikos, who fled Arab conquests and brought his knowledge to Constantinople around the year 670. The formula was considered a state secret of the highest order, a closely guarded monopoly of the imperial court. Knowledge was compartmentalized. The chemists who brewed it likely knew only their part of the process, and the artisans who built the siphons knew only theirs. The emperors themselves are said to have passed the complete formula down orally to their heirs, never trusting it to parchment. This extreme secrecy is the primary reason the formula was eventually lost. As the empire declined, political turmoil and the loss of key territories may have severed this chain of oral tradition. By the time Constantinople fell to the Ottomans in 1453, the knowledge of how to create true Greek fire had already faded into legend. This intentional obscurity raises a profound point about the nature of advanced technology in the ancient world. The loss of Greek fire is not an isolated incident. It is part of a pattern where a civilization achieves a technological peak and then, through war, secrecy, or simply the passage of time, that knowledge vanishes. It echoes the mystery of the Antikythera Mechanism or the Damascus steel. Greek fire was not just a weapon, it was a chemical engineering breakthrough centuries ahead of its time, a manifestation of a sophisticated understanding of chemistry and mechanics. Its existence forces us to reconsider the Byzantine Empire not merely as a preserver of Roman tradition, but as a vibrant, innovative center of science and technology that developed a decisive military edge it managed to protect for over 700 years. It stands as a fiery testament to human ingenuity and a sobering reminder that even the most advanced knowledge is fragile and can be extinguished as quickly as it flares into being. Our journey now takes us from the fiery seas of Byzantium to the enduring foundations of an even earlier empire, where the very stones tell a story of a forgotten science. As we marvel at the skeletal remains of our own modern infrastructure, crumbling bridges and sprawling parking garages after just a few decades, the Romans offer a silent, stunning rebuke. Their concrete structures have not merely survived for 2,000 years. Many, like the majestic Pantheon with its still intact dome, or the sprawling harbors at Caesarea have actually grown stronger with time, especially when submerged in the one thing that destroys our own concrete, seawater. This isn't a matter of superior brute force. It is a testament to a lost chemical blueprint, a recipe for stone that was more advanced than anything we would use again until very recently. The secret to this longevity lies in a seemingly humble ingredient: volcanic ash. The Romans, particularly those in the Bay of Naples region, had access to a fine volcanic dust called pozzolana, named after the town of Pozzuoli. This was no ordinary dirt. When mixed with lime and water, it triggers a spectacularly different chemical reaction than the one in modern Portland cement. Our concrete sets through a simple hydration process where the paste dries and hardens. Roman concrete, however, undergoes a process called pozzolanic reaction. The silica-rich volcanic ash reacts with the lime and water to form an incredibly stable compound called calcium aluminum silicate hydrate, or CaSH. Think of modern concrete as a bundle of dry sticks glued together. It's strong but brittle, and water eventually works its way into the gaps, freezing and thawing and breaking the bonds. Roman concrete is more like a dense, interlocking crystalline structure, a monolithic rock that is inherently more durable and flexible. But the real magic, the detail that seems to border on alchemy, is what happens when this Roman concrete is exposed to seawater. For a modern concrete pier, salt water is a death sentence. The chloride ions aggressively attack the steel rebar inside, causing it to rust and expand, which cracks the concrete from within. Roman marine concrete had no rebar, and instead of being eroded by seawater, it was improved by it. Recent studies using advanced microscopy have discovered that when seawater percolates through the Roman mixture, it actually dissolves components of the volcanic ash and lime. This allows new, plate-like minerals to grow within the concrete's pores. The most important of these is a rare mineral called aluminous tobamorite. This crystal is notoriously difficult to create in a lab, requiring high temperatures, yet the Romans managed to foster its growth at the ambient temperature of the Mediterranean Sea, simply by getting the chemistry of their initial mix exactly right. These crystals effectively act as a living repair system, blocking microcracks and reinforcing the structure from the inside out, making it more resilient with each passing century. This leaves us with a profound historical puzzle. Why was such a superior formula lost? The decline and eventual fall of the Roman Empire is the overarching answer, but the specifics are a sobering lesson in how knowledge can vanish. Concrete production was not a centralized scientific industry with written manuals. It was a localized craft, a trade secret passed down from master to apprentice through generations of builders. As the empire's economy contracted and its political structure fragmented, the extensive trade networks that supplied specific types of volcanic ash from Italy were disrupted. Building on a monumental scale ceased, and the specialized knowledge required for this complex concrete slowly faded, replaced by simpler, more readily available materials like brick and mortar. The recipe wasn't so much forgotten as it was made obsolete by a changing world, its brilliance buried under the rubble of history until modern scientists, armed with electron microscopes, began to reverse engineer the ruins. Yet even the Romans, with their mastery of materials, were working within a known world. Our next blueprint takes us to one of the most remote places on Earth, where a civilization performed an engineering miracle in total isolation, only to leave behind a silent, haunting mystery. Over 1,000 miles from the nearest inhabited shore, a tiny volcanic speck in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, lies Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island. And scattered across its grassy slopes are the brooding, enigmatic giants known as the Moai. These are not simple stone carvings, they are colossal human figures, some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons. For centuries, their existence posed a seemingly unanswerable question. How did a few thousand people with no metal tools, no draft animals, and no wheels not only carve these behemoths but also move them miles across rugged terrain and raise them onto massive stone platforms? The process began at the volcanic quarry of Ronoroku, a crater that served as the island's statue factory. Here, the moai were carved directly from the compressed volcanic tuff of the crater's walls. Using hand-held basalt stone picks, teams of craftsmen would patiently chip away at the rock, first outlining the statue's front and then gradually undercutting it to free it from the bedrock. The level of detail achieved with these simple tools is astounding. The moai feature gracefully carved fingers resting on their hips, strong jawlines, elongated earlobes, and most often empty eye sockets. But they were not finished here. Once separated, the statue would be carefully eased down the outer slope of the quarry, where artisans would complete the back and fine-tune the details. Hundreds of moai remain in the quarry in various stages of completion, creating an eerie, frozen snapshot of the process that was suddenly abandoned. The greatest mystery, however, is not the carving but the transportation. How did they move these multi-ton monuments, some of them taller than a two-story building, across miles of uneven landscape to their final ceremonial sites called Ahu on the coast? For a long time, the prevailing theory involved a Herculean effort of log rolling and sledges, using the island's now vanished palm forests. But this idea has been challenged and refined by brilliant experimental archaeology. One compelling theory, supported by local oral tradition, suggests the moai were walked to their destinations, using 3 strong ropes, one tied to the statue's head to pull it forward, and 2 tied to the base to rock it from side to side. A relatively small team could have maneuvered the statue in an upright position, making it appear to walk across the land. This method, demonstrated in modern experiments, is not only feasible but also aligns beautifully with the islanders' own legend that the statues possessed mana, or spiritual power, and walked on their own to their platforms. But the work was not done once the moai reached the Ahu. The final, breathtaking act was to raise this multi-ton giant onto the stone platform and then place a separate carved stone pukao or topknot on its head. These red scoria stone cylinders could weigh over 10 tons themselves. The erection process likely involved a sophisticated ramp and lever system. Builders would have constructed a large, gradually sloping mound of stones and earth against the front of the Ahu. The moai would then be dragged up this ramp face down. Once at the top, ropes would be used to carefully pivot the base over the edge of the platform, while teams with levers underneath would incrementally raise the head, slowly walking the statue into an upright position as the ramp was dismantled from beneath it. Placing the pukao would have required an even more ingenious method, perhaps using a cantilevered lever or a separate ramp system to lift it precisely onto the statue's head. This incredible effort speaks to a society of profound spiritual belief and complex social organization. The moai were not mere decorations. They were revered ancestors, representations of powerful chiefs who, once erected on their Ahu, would watch over the living village and channel spiritual energy to ensure fertility and prosperity. The entire community was invested in this process, a collective act of faith and engineering that defined their culture, which makes the island's eventual fate all the more tragic. The societal collapse that left the work in the quarry frozen in time was not caused by a single mystery, but by a devastating ecological one. The very resource-intensive process of moving the statues, which likely required vast quantities of wood for ropes, sledges, and rollers, contributed to the deforestation of the island. Without trees, the soil eroded, crop yields fell, and the islanders could no longer build seaworthy canoes for fishing. Society descended into violent clan warfare, toppling the very moai they had worked so hard to erect. The story of the moai is therefore a powerful and cautionary blueprint, a testament to both the breathtaking heights of human ingenuity and the fragile balance between ambition and sustainability. Yet while the story of the moai is one of societal ambition and environmental consequence, Our next blueprint tells a tale of quiet, enduring perfection, not in stone but in metal. In the heart of Delhi, India, standing within the complex of the Qutb Minar, is a silent sentinel that has defied one of nature's most relentless forces for over 1,600 years. It is the Delhi Iron Pillar, a 23-foot-tall column of wrought iron that bears a message from a Gupta dynasty king, but whispers a far more profound secret to modern engineers. In a world where we watch our cars and bridges succumb to the orange-brown blush of oxidation in just a few years, this ancient artifact shows not a single flake of rust. It is a metallurgical marvel, a testament to a scientific understanding so precise that it feels almost supernatural. The pillar's origins are as impressive as its preservation. An inscription in Sanskrit etched into its surface reveals it was erected as a standard to honor the Hindu god Vishnu, likely during the reign of King Chandragupta II around the year 400 CE. Originally, it stood in a temple complex in central India, possibly at a site called Udayagiri, before being moved to its current location centuries later. The sheer act of forging it was a monumental achievement. Weighing over 6 tons, it was not made by casting molten iron in a mold as one might expect. Instead, it was created by a process called forge welding. Blacksmiths of the time would have heated small pieces of pure wrought iron in a furnace, hammered them into shape on an anvil, and then laboriously welded these individual pieces together into a single, massive column. The fact that it remains a single, cohesive unit after 16 centuries is a testament to their incredible skill and the purity of the iron they used. But the real magic, the secret to its timelessness, lies in its chemical composition. Modern spectroscopic analysis has revealed that the pillar's iron is of exceptional purity with a very low carbon content. More importantly, it has a very high phosphorus content and a complete absence of elements like manganese and sulfur. This specific recipe is the key to its rust resistance. When the pillar's surface is exposed to the air, a thin, protective layer forms. This isn't the flaky, unstable rust we're familiar with. It's a stable, continuous film of crystalline iron hydrogen phosphate hydrate, known as a mesawite layer. This invisible shield acts as a barrier, preventing oxygen and moisture from penetrating deeper into the metal to cause the destructive corrosion we see everywhere else. It's a perfect, self-regulating passive coating, engineered not in a lab but at a forge. What's truly humbling is that this advanced knowledge seems to have been an intentional innovation, not a happy accident. The high phosphorus content didn't occur naturally in the ore. It was a deliberate addition achieved through the specific smelting process. Ancient Indian ironsmiths used a unique method where they did not add lime flux to their furnaces. Lime is a basic material that would have stripped the phosphorus out. By omitting it, they allowed the phosphorus from the ore to remain in the final metal. This suggests a sophisticated, if empirically derived, understanding of how different elements interacted within their material. They weren't just making iron, they were alloying it for a specific desired property, longevity. The Delhi Iron Pillar stands not as a mysterious anomaly, but as a documented pinnacle of a long and advanced tradition of Indian metallurgy. Ancient texts like the Arthashastra discuss various types of iron and their uses, indicating a deep cultural appreciation for the science of metals. This pillar is the ultimate physical manifestation of that knowledge, a 1,600-year-old experiment that is still running. It challenges our modern assumption that corrosion-resistant alloys like stainless steel are purely a 20th century invention. While we use chromium to achieve a similar effect, the Gupta-era smiths mastered the art using phosphorus, creating a monument that has literally stood the test of time, a rust-defying marvel that continues to baffle and inspire scientists to this very day. Shifting our focus from the enduring strength of the Delhi Iron Pillar, we turn to an object whose power was said to be not in its permanence, but in its profound and terrifying potency. Few artifacts from the ancient world have captured the human imagination quite like the Ark of the Covenant. Described in the Hebrew Bible as the literal throne of God on earth, it was far more than a simple golden chest. It was the ultimate confluence of divine instruction and intricate craftsmanship, a holy relic of such immense power that it was said to be both a blessing to the faithful and a weapon of utter destruction against its enemies. Its story begins not with a discovery, but with a detailed set of divine blueprints delivered to Moses on Mount Sinai. According to the book of Exodus, God provided Moses with extraordinarily precise instructions for the ark's construction. It was to be a rectangular chest made of acacia wood, a durable and non-resinous timber common to the region. This wooden core was then to be overlaid inside and out with pure gold. Its dimensions were specified down to the cubit, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Atop this chest sat a solid gold cover, known as the mercy seat or the propitiatory, and from this cover emerged two magnificent figures of hammered gold cherubim, with their wings stretched upward and overshadowing the lid facing one another. The ark was designed to be portable, with 4 gold rings cast onto its feet, through which acacia wood poles, also overlaid with gold, could be inserted for carrying. This was not a task for amateurs. It was divinely mandated work for master artisans filled with the spirit of wisdom. The entire description paints a picture of breathtaking opulence and meticulous, almost obsessive, geometric and material precision. But what was it for? Its primary function was as a sacred container. It was said to hold the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, a pot of manna from the Israelites' time in the wilderness, and later the rod of Aaron. Yet its role extended far beyond that of a storage box. The ark was the focal point of God's presence. In the tabernacle, and later in the Temple of Solomon, it resided in the Holy of Holies, the innermost and most sacred chamber where only the high priest could enter, and only once a year on Yom Kippur. It was from the space between the 2 cherubim on the mercy seat that God was said to speak to Moses. The ark led the Israelites into battle, its presence ensuring victory. When carried around the walls of Jericho, those walls famously came tumbling down. It was the ultimate symbol of a covenant between a people and their deity. This is where the accounts shift from the spiritual to the seemingly supernatural, and where modern scientific minds have begun to speculate. The biblical narratives describe the ark exhibiting terrifying and lethal powers that, to a contemporary audience, sound less like divine miracles and more like uncontrolled high-voltage phenomena. When the Philistines captured the ark, they were struck with tumors and plagues until they returned it. When a man named Uzzah reached out to steady the ark as the oxen pulling its cart stumbled, he was instantly struck dead for his unauthorized touch. The most striking description comes from the consecration of the tabernacle, when a fire from the Lord consumed the offerings on the altar, and later the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle, appearing as a consuming fire on top of the mount. To some, these are not metaphors, they are eyewitness accounts of electrical discharges. This has led to a fascinating and controversial theory that the Ark of the Covenant was a powerful electrical device, perhaps an early capacitor or a form of electrophorus. The construction details are key to this hypothesis. The design, a box made of gold-clad wood, bears a striking resemblance to a Leyden jar, an early form of capacitor invented in the 18th century, which also used 2 conductors, the inner and outer gold layers separated by an insulator, the acacia wood. The ark was often carried using the wooden poles, which would have served as perfect insulators to protect the bearers from any charge it might have held. If the ark were placed in a dry, desert environment, the constant friction of the gold cloth and tapestries in the tabernacle, or even the arid, windy conditions, could have built up a massive static charge on its golden surface. Touching it would then result in a fatal shock, explaining Uzzah's sudden death. The fire from the Lord could have been a dramatic electrical arc, The cherubim on the lid are theorized to have acted as electrodes or antennae, perhaps designed to collect atmospheric electricity. Some have even suggested that the Ark required a specific, lost ritual to charge it safely, and that the precise instructions for its construction were actually a technical manual to ensure its proper and safe operation. This interpretation transforms the ancient priests from mystics into the first electrical engineers, caretakers of a dangerous and powerful technology they revered as divine. Of course, mainstream theology and archaeology offer a very different perspective. They see these theories as a form of modern projection, an attempt to explain the supernatural through the lens of our own technology. For believers, the Ark's power was purely metaphysical, a manifestation of God's will that operated outside the laws of physics as we understand them. Its dangerous nature was a reflection of divine holiness, a power so pure that imperfection and sin could not stand in its presence. The detailed construction was not for electrical purposes, but to create an object of ultimate beauty and worthiness, fit to serve as an earthly throne for a heavenly king. The Ark's ultimate fate only deepens its legend. After the Babylonian destruction of the first temple in 586 BC, it vanished from the historical record. Was it destroyed, hidden away in a secret chamber beneath Jerusalem, or taken to a far-off land like Ethiopia, where one ancient church claims to guard it to this day? Its disappearance ensures that the Ark remains the ultimate historical blueprint, a set of instructions for an object of faith whose true nature, whether divine or technological, we may never fully comprehend. And yet, even the Ark's potentially divine power was channeled through a physical, man-made object, a testament to the ancient world's ability to manifest wonder through craftsmanship. But what if that craftsmanship wasn't just about creating sacred vessels, but about building life itself? Imagine walking into a grand temple in 1st century Alexandria. The air is thick with incense and the faithful gather for a ceremony. As the high priest raises his hands, a hidden mechanism is triggered. Suddenly, temple doors swing open on their own. A statue turns to face the congregation, its arm lifting to offer a libation. From a perch above, a mechanical bird begins to sing a tinny, automated song. To the worshippers, it is pure magic, a miracle performed by the gods. In reality, it is the genius of a man named Hero, and it represents a lost world of automation that wouldn't be seen again for over 1,000 years. Hero of Alexandria was a mathematician and engineer living in the 1st century CE, a time when the Roman Empire was at its zenith and Hellenistic science was flourishing. He is often described as the greatest experimenter of antiquity, and his surviving writings are not merely theoretical texts, they are detailed blueprints for an astonishing array of devices. Among his most captivating inventions were his automata self-operating machines that simulated life. He designed mechanical birds that chirped and sang by using steam or water pressure to whistle through tiny beak-shaped pipes. He created automated puppet theaters that put on entire, complex miniature plays. In one described show, a series of robotic figures sawed wood, chopped trees, and even navigated a boat, all driven by a complex system of weights, ropes, and rotating drums that acted like a primitive programmable computer. The power behind these marvels was often simple yet brilliantly applied physics. Hero mastered the use of steam, water, and air pressure. His most famous engine, the Eolipile, was the world's first recorded steam engine. It was a hollow sphere mounted on a boiler. As the water boiled, steam shot out of 2 opposing bent nozzles, causing the sphere to rotate rapidly on its axis. It was a clear demonstration of the principle of action and reaction, a concept not formally defined until Newton's time. Yet, to Hero and his patrons, the Eolipile was likely just a fascinating temple curiosity, a wonder to demonstrate the cleverness of the inventor and the power of the gods he worked for, rather than a technology to be harnessed for practical work. This is the central, haunting question of Hero's work. Why did this industrial revolution happen 2,000 years too early? The blueprints were there, the scientific understanding was present, and the mechanical skill existed. The answer lies not in a lack of capability, but in a lack of necessity and economic incentive. The ancient Mediterranean economy was built on the backs of abundant, cheap human labor, primarily enslaved people. There was no pressing need to develop machines to replace manual workers. Innovation was directed not toward industry and production, but toward religion, entertainment, and the display of status. Automata were the playthings of the rich and the tools of priests to inspire awe among the populace. They were wonders, not workers. Furthermore, the knowledge itself was fragile and isolated. Like the secret of Greek fire, the intricate designs of inventors like Hero, Archimedes, and Ctesibius were often confined to small, elite circles. They were written on papyrus scrolls that could easily be lost to fire, decay, or the simple neglect that follows societal collapse. As the Roman Empire declined and fractured, the great libraries that housed this knowledge dwindled. The intellectual drive that fueled such experimentation gave way to more immediate concerns of survival. The intricate gear systems of the Antikythera Mechanism and the steam principles of the Eolipile were forgotten, their blueprints gathering dust in forgotten archives, waiting for a future age that would need them enough to reinvent them. The story of Hero's automata is therefore a poignant lesson in the nature of progress. It shows that technological advancement is not an inevitable, linear climb, but a path full of branching roads, dead ends, and forgotten wonders, where having the blueprint is only half the battle. The world must be ready to build it. Even as Hero's automata were astounding temple-goers in the Roman world, an equally brilliant mind on the other side of the continent was harnessing the forces of nature for a far more practical and potentially life-saving purpose. In the year 132 AD, during the Han Dynasty of China, a court astronomer, mathematician, and inventor named Zhang Heng presented the emperor with a most peculiar object. It was an ornate bronze vessel, nearly 6 feet in diameter, shaped like a large wine jar and adorned with 8 dragons snaking down its sides. Each dragon held a bronze ball in its mouth, and below each dragon, a corresponding bronze toad sat with its own mouth open, ready to catch something. To the uninitiated, it looked like a magnificent piece of ceremonial art, but Zhang Heng called it his Hufeng Didongye, or instrument for questioning the wind and shaking of the earth. It was, by all accounts, the world's first seismoscope, a device capable of detecting the direction of an earthquake from hundreds of miles away. The genius of this invention was not just in its concept, but in its remarkably sophisticated internal mechanism, which scholars and engineers have been trying to perfectly reconstruct for centuries. While the original device has been lost to time, historical texts from the era describe its core principle. Inside the bronze vessel, hanging from the top, was a heavy inverted pendulum, a large weight suspended from a central pivot. This pendulum was the heart of the machine, acting as a motion sensor. The jar's 8 sides corresponded to the 8 principal directions of the compass. On the inside, near the top, 8 lever arms were carefully positioned, each one connecting to the mouth of one of the external dragons. The system was precisely calibrated so that the pendulum could swing, but its movement was restricted. It could only trigger one of the 8 levers. Here is how it worked in practice. When an earthquake seismic waves, those vibrations that travel through the earth, reach the device, even from a great distance, they would cause the heavy internal pendulum to sway. But it wouldn't just sway randomly. The specific direction from which the waves arrived would determine the direction of the swing. The pendulum would bump into just one of the 8 internal levers. This action would release a catch, causing the corresponding dragon on that side of the vessel to open its mouth and drop the bronze ball it was holding. The ball would then fall directly into the mouth of the waiting toad below with a loud and unmistakable clang. The direction indicated by that specific dragon-toad pair would point the way to the epicenter of the quake. It was a system of breathtaking elegance and mechanical simplicity, a direct transfer of kinetic energy into a clear, unambiguous signal, the true test of its accuracy, and the event that cemented its place in history was recorded a few years after its invention. The court annals tell a story that seems almost too perfect to be true. One day, a dragon on the device, the one facing west, suddenly dropped its ball. Yet, in the capital city of Luoyang, no one had felt the slightest tremor. Skeptics at court dismissed it as a malfunction or an omen, but Zhang Heng stood by his invention. Several days later, a messenger arrived from a Western commandery located over 400 miles away. His report confirmed that a major earthquake had indeed struck that region on the exact day, and at the precise hour the dragon had released its ball. The court was astonished. The device hadn't just detected a quake, it had done so with a level of sensitivity and directional accuracy that seemed impossible. It provided the central government with a crucial early warning system, allowing them to swiftly send aid to devastated areas long before the news could arrive by conventional means. This leads to the profound and frustrating mystery that surrounds Zhang Heng's seismoscope, the complete loss of its precise technical knowledge. We know it worked because the historical records are clear and specific. But the exact internal design, the precise shape of the pendulum, the specific mechanics of the levers, the subtle calibrations that made it so sensitive, was never fully documented in a way that survived the centuries. The device itself was likely lost in the chaos of the later Han Dynasty's collapse. For generations, scientists and historians have attempted to recreate a working model based on the brief descriptions available. Some theories suggest the pendulum was not a simple weight but a suspended mass on a stick. Others propose the internal mechanism was far more complex, perhaps involving a system of gears or a delicately balanced floating body. The fact that we are still debating the specifics underscores just how advanced this technology was for its time. Zhang Heng's creation represents a staggering leap in scientific thought. It was born from an understanding that earthquakes were not the wrath of angry deities, but natural physical phenomena that produced detectable waves which could be measured and tracked. This was a fundamentally scientific worldview centuries ahead of the West. The device stands as a powerful symbol of a golden age of Chinese innovation, a period that gave the world paper, the compass, and advanced astronomy. Yet, like so many other blueprints we have explored, its brilliance was a flickering candle in the winds of time. The knowledge to build it was lost, and the basic principle of the pendulum seismometer would not be independently reinvented in the West until the 19th century, a gap of over 1,700 years. It is a humbling reminder that progress is not a straight line, and that the seeds of modern science were often planted and then forgotten in the distant past. But our journey through history's most perplexing artifacts would not be complete without confronting one of its most captivating and controversial figures, the crystal skull. Emerging from the shadows of private collections in the late 19th century, these life-sized carvings of human skulls, crafted from a single block of clear or milky quartz, present a mystery that is as much about modern obsession as it is about ancient artistry. The most famous among them, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, is often cited as the ultimate example. Its proponents describe an object of impossible perfection, with a detachable, perfectly articulated lower jaw, optical qualities that shouldn't be achievable without modern tools, and a surface so flawlessly polished it seems to defy the very era from which it supposedly came. The immediate, haunting question is how any ancient civilization, even the advanced Maya or Aztec cultures to whom they are attributed, could have produced such a thing with only stone, sand, and water for polishing. The argument for their antiquity hinges on this very impossibility. The quartz crystal used is an incredibly hard material, rating a 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness, meaning it can only be scratched by substances like topaz, sapphire, or diamond. To carve something so intricate from this stubborn material using prehistoric tools would have been a monumental, multi-generational task. Furthermore, the precise carving and legendary polish are said to be free of the microscopic scratches that would be left by modern metal tools and diamond-tipped abrasives. Instead, some claim the surface shows evidence of being worked by hand with ancient, patient techniques involving sand, water, and rotary tools made of wood or bone. This has led to extraordinary theories that the skulls were created using a now-lost technology, perhaps even a mysterious process that could somehow soften the hard quartz to make it malleable like clay before it re-hardened into its final, perfect form. Beyond their physical creation, the skulls are shrouded in a web of modern lore that attributes to them supernatural powers. Many who have claimed to be in their presence report strange psychological and physical sensations, visions of past and future events, feelings of healing energy, or an overwhelming sense of peace. Some legends popularized by books and films suggest the skulls are of extraterrestrial origin, left behind as storehouses of advanced knowledge or as keys to unlocking human potential. Others believe they are relics from the lost continent of Atlantis, surviving the cataclysm to guide future civilizations. In these narratives, the skulls are not merely artifacts. They are active, enigmatic objects waiting for the right time, or for all of them to be reunited to reveal their ultimate secret. However, the cold, hard light of scientific analysis has cast serious doubt on these romantic notions. In 2007 and 2008, a team of researchers from the British Museum and the Smithsonian Institution conducted a meticulous examination of the most famous crystal skulls using electron microscopy and X-ray crystallography. Their findings were definitive and devastating to the ancient origin theory. The microscopic analysis revealed telltale marks left by rotary wheels and polishing compounds made of substances like carborundum and diamond, industrial-grade abrasives that were only invented in the 19th and 20th centuries. There were no such marks from hand-powered tools using sand or natural abrasives. The evidence pointed conclusively to a modern origin, likely in workshops in Idar Oberstein, Germany, a renowned center for gemstone carving in the 19th century that had the precise jeweler's lathes and tools needed for such work. This revelation ties directly into the circumstances of their discovery, or more accurately, their appearance. Unlike most significant archaeological finds, the crystal skulls did not emerge from documented professional excavations. They simply appeared on the art market, often with romanticized and unverifiable provenance stories provided by adventurous collectors and dealers. The Mitchell Hedges skull, for example, was famously claimed to have been discovered by the adventurer's daughter, Anna, in a Mayan temple in Belize in the 1920s. However, no corroborating evidence or field notes exist, and many historians now believe it was likely purchased at a Sotheby's auction in London in 1943. This pattern of dubious origins strongly suggests the skulls were clever forgeries created to feed a growing European and American fascination with the exotic mysteries of ancient civilizations, a lucrative business that capitalized on the era's spiritualism and archaeological enthusiasm. So, where does this leave us? The crystal skulls stand at a fascinating crossroads between a genuine historical mystery and a modern cultural phenomenon. Scientifically, the debate over their authenticity is largely settled. They are exquisite examples of 19th-century lapidary art, not pre-Columbian relics. Yet, their enduring power and the compelling nature of the questions they raised cannot be so easily dismissed. They forced us to look closely at what we thought was possible for ancient craftspeople, and in doing so, made us re-evaluate the incredible skill that genuinely ancient cultures did possess. They also hold up a mirror to our own desires, showing a deep, perpetual human need to believe in lost worlds, advanced knowledge, and objects of power that connect us to a past that is more mysterious and magnificent than the one we find in the history books. In the end, the greatest mystery of the crystal skulls may not be who made them, but why we so desperately wanted them to be real. But if the power of the Ark was spiritual and the ingenuity of Zhang Heng's seismoscope was scientific, our next blueprint seems to defy both categories, suggesting instead a form of technological inspiration so advanced it appears to be literally out of place. Deep within the archives of the Cairo Museum lies a small, unassuming wooden artifact discovered in 1898 during an excavation of a tomb at Saqqara, a burial site that dates back to 200 BC. It's called the Saqqara bird. At first glance, it looks like a simple, stylized carving of a falcon, a common religious symbol in ancient Egypt, but a closer look reveals something strange. Unlike a bird which has legs and often outstretched wings in profile, this object has no legs. Its wings are not spread for soaring. They are straight, rigid, and set at a perfect 90-degree angle to its fuselage-like body. It features a distinct vertical tail fin, a feature no bird on Earth possesses. To the modern eye, it bears a startling and unmistakable resemblance to a modern airplane or glider. This peculiar shape has fueled a fascinating and controversial theory that the Saqqara bird is not a bird at all, but a scale model of a much larger, functional flying machine. Proponents of this idea point to its sophisticated aerodynamic profile. In the 1970s, Dr. Kolul Messiha, an Egyptologist and model plane enthusiast, was the first to seriously propose the aircraft hypothesis. He noted that the craft's wings are expertly angled, creating an airfoil shape that would generate lift. The most compelling evidence for him, however, was the tail fin. A bird's tail is horizontal, used for steering and balance. A vertical tail fin is a critical component of an aircraft's empennage, designed to provide stability in flight and prevent sideways drift, known as yaw. Its presence on the Saqqara bird suggests a deep, if intuitive, understanding of principles that would not be formally defined for another 2 millennia. The theories surrounding its purpose are as varied as they are intriguing. If it is a model of a working glider, what was its original function? Some suggest it could have been a ceremonial object, a child's toy, or even a weather vane. The most dramatic possibility is that it represents a larger, functional glider used for short flights, perhaps in religious ceremonies to simulate divine flight. Without a propulsion system, it would have been a glider requiring a launch from a high place. While there's no evidence the ancient Egyptians achieved manned flight, the idea that they could have been experimenting with the basic principles of aerodynamics is not, on its face, impossible. They were brilliant observers of nature and master engineers. Observing the flight of seeds or insects could have inspired them to try and replicate the phenomenon on a larger scale. This mystery is not confined to Egypt. Across the Atlantic, in the collections of the Bogota Gold Museum, are hundreds of small gold artifacts crafted by the Quimbaya culture of Colombia, dating to around 1000 CE. Among them are intricate zoomorphic figures, but a number of them are strikingly abstract. These objects, often called the Tolima jets or Quimbaya airplanes, feature a fuselage delta wing-like structures and a vertical tail fin that curves upward, closely resembling a modern fighter jet or the space shuttle. Their symmetrical, aerodynamic form is difficult to dismiss as a mere representation of an insect or a bird, which are typically asymmetrical in design. To test the airplane hypothesis, several enthusiasts have taken a practical approach. They've built scaled-up, weighted models of these artifacts. In the 1990s, German aerodynamics experts Peter Belting and Algund Einboom created large-scale, radio-controlled models of the Quimbaya objects, adding only a propeller and an engine. To the astonishment of many, these models not only flew, but they performed exceptionally well, demonstrating stable flight characteristics even without the complex flight control systems of modern aircraft. Similarly, tests with replicas of the Saqqara bird have shown that it possesses the necessary lift and glide ratios to function effectively as a small glider. These experiments don't prove that the ancients had aircraft, but they do demonstrate that the shapes they created are, by pure coincidence or by design, fundamentally aerodynamic. So, how do we explain these curious objects if we dismiss the ancient aviation theory? Mainstream archaeology offers more grounded but no less fascinating explanations. For the Saqqara bird, the most widely accepted answer is that it is exactly what it first appears to be, a bird. It could simply be a stylized falcon, a symbol of the god Horus, and its tail fin might be a representational tail feather that has been broken or stylized over time. It may have once been part of a larger object, perhaps mounted on a boat's prow as a weather vane, which would explain its lack of legs and its aerodynamic shape. The Quimbayar artifacts are often interpreted as highly stylized representations of local fauna. Many experts argue they depict birds, fish, insects like dragonflies or beetles, or even stingrays, all of which can possess features that, when abstracted into gold, might appear mechanical to our modern eye. A beetle's hardened wing cases, or elytra, could be misinterpreted as delta wings, and its head could form a nose cone. This dichotomy of interpretation highlights a fundamental challenge in studying the ancient world. We are separated from these artisans by centuries and by entirely different cultural frameworks. We see their world through the lens of our own technology. An object that looks like an airplane to us may have represented a sacred animal or a mythological concept to them. The fact that these shapes can fly when modeled is a fascinating example of convergent design, the way nature's efficient forms can be independently arrived at by human engineers. The Saqqara bird and the Quimbayar artifacts stand as a captivating reminder that the line between inspired observation and accidental invention can be incredibly thin. They may not be proof of ancient runways, but they are proof of the ancient mind's incredible capacity for observation, abstraction, and creating forms of timeless and mysterious elegance. Yet another artifact that seems to defy its own time period sits not in a museum of science, but in the library of Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. It is a map drawn on gazelle skin parchment in the year 1513 by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis. He himself wrote notes in the margins explaining that this world map was a compilation of many older sources, including what he called the maps of the ancients. At first glance, it appears to be a typical, if beautiful, early 16th century chart of the known world, notable for its detailed rendering of the western coasts of Europe and Africa and the eastern shores of the New World. But it is the map's southern extremity that has ignited a firestorm of controversy and wonder for over a century, for it appears to show a landmass that should have been completely unknown and unimaginable to any cartographer of that era, the coastline of Antarctica, hundreds of years before it was officially discovered, and crucially, depicted not under its massive ice cap, but as a green, flowing continent. The claim is as astonishing as it is precise. The land at the bottom of the Piri Reis map, which Reis labeled as the southern coast, features river estuaries, mountain ranges, and what look like free-flowing waterways. This is the central, mind-bending mystery. Antarctica has been buried under a sheet of ice more than a mile thick for at least the last 6 million years. For its coastline to be depicted without ice, the original source maps used by Piri Reis would have to be based on geographical knowledge gathered an impossibly long time ago, from a pre-human or at least a prehistoric civilization with the capability to conduct a sophisticated mapping survey of a frozen continent. This theory, most famously put forward by Professor Charles Hapgood in the 1960s, suggests that the map preserves the cartographic legacy of a lost, advanced global seafaring culture, perhaps even the proverbial Atlanteans, whose knowledge was passed down through the ages and eventually found its way into the hands of the Ottoman admiral. Piri Reis's own notes lend a powerful credibility to the idea that he was working from extraordinarily ancient sources. He specifically states that he used about 20 source maps and charts, including one that he claimed was drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. But most intriguingly, he wrote that some of his sources dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, over 1800 years earlier. this admission opens the door to a tantalizing possibility. Could the Library of Alexandria, that great repository of ancient world knowledge destroyed in antiquity, have held detailed maps of the entire globe, including the Americas and Antarctica, which were copied and preserved in other centers of learning and then slowly filtered down through the centuries? The Piri Reis map, in this view, is not an original work of genius but a priceless copy of a copy, a single surviving fragment of a complete world geography that was known to the ancients and then utterly lost. Mainstream cartography and geology, however, offer a very different and less speculative interpretation. Skeptics argue that the landmass identified as Antarctica is far more likely to be a distorted, speculative, or composite representation of the southern tip of South America, a region that was still very poorly understood by Europeans in 1513. Early mapmakers often filled blank spaces on their charts with guesswork, mythical lands, or details borrowed from travelers' tales that were often unreliable. The so-called rivers and mountains on the map could simply be artistic flourishes or misrepresentations of the Patagonian coastline. Furthermore, modern comparisons of the Piri Reis map's coastline to sonar maps of the subglacial topography of Antarctica show only very general and debatable similarities, not the precise match that proponents of the ancient map theory claim. The true story of the Piri Reis map may in fact be a brilliant fusion of these two perspectives. It doesn't have to be a literal chart of an ice-free Antarctica to be a revolutionary historical document. It stands as powerful evidence for a much more sophisticated and interconnected pre-Columbian world than traditional history often allows. The accurate portrayal of the Brazilian coast and the inclusion of the Andes Mountains suggests that Piri Reis did indeed have access to Portuguese or Spanish source maps that were state secrets at the time. But it also hints at something more. The possibility that he incorporated knowledge from Arab, Indian, and even older Greek sources speaks to a vast, unofficial network of exploration and information exchange that operated outside of official European channels. The map is a palimpsest, a layered document where the hard-won knowledge of 15th and 16th century explorers is superimposed over the faded, half-understood whispers of a much more ancient geographical tradition. It may not prove the existence of a lost civilization with Ice Age surveyors, but it absolutely proves that our standard narrative of global discovery is incomplete. The Piri Reis map is a ghost image of a lost chapter in human history, a cryptic message from the past telling us that the world was mapped long before we ever thought it was possible. Buried in the fertile river deltas and jungle foothills of Costa Rica lies a mystery carved in granite, the enigmatic stone spheres of the Diquis culture. Discovered in the 1930s when the United Fruit Company was clearing land for banana plantations, these artifacts are not crude rocks but near-perfect spheres, ranging from a few centimeters in diameter to massive orbs over 2.5 meters across, weighing up to 16 tons. Their surfaces are unnervingly smooth, their curves so geometrically flawless that when modern engineers measured them, they found the precision of the sphere's diameters often had a variance of less than a centimeter. This is not the kind of artifact one expects from a pre-Columbian society using stone tools. It is a display of obsessive mathematical precision carved from one of the hardest materials on Earth. The method of their creation is a puzzle that archaeologists and stonemasons have been trying to solve for decades. The Diquis people, who flourished between 800 and 1500 CE, are not known to have had metal tools harder than gold or copper, yet they were shaping massive blocks of granodiorite, a tough, coarse-grained igneous rock. The prevailing theory is a testament to human patience and ingenuity. Artisans likely identified a suitable boulder and first shaped it roughly using heat. They would have built a large fire around the stone to heat its surface and then rapidly cooled it with water, causing flakes of rock to spall off due to thermal shock. Once a rough spherical shape was achieved, the painstaking work began. Using smaller hammerstones made of an even harder material like gabbro or quartz, they would have patiently pecked away at the surface, grinding it down with sand and water as an abrasive over what was likely generations for the largest spheres. This process explains the smoothness, but the near-perfect roundness suggests an additional, brilliant technique. Researchers propose the sculptors may have used a system of wooden frames or hanging cords to constantly check the sphere's curvature from every angle, slowly removing any high spots until the ideal form was achieved. But why would a society invest such an immense amount of collective labor into creating these objects? Their purpose is the deepest layer of the mystery. Many of the spheres were found arranged in patterns, most commonly in lines or triangles, often leading to or surrounding important structures like public plazas or the bases of chiefs' dwellings. This has led to a compelling theory that they were not merely status symbols but had an astronomical function. Specific alignments of these stone lines may have pointed toward celestial events, such as the rising sun on the solstices or equinoxes, or the appearance of significant stars. In this view, the spheres were monumental, permanent calendars and observatories, anchoring the Dikwis people's understanding of the cycles of time and the heavens to the very earth they lived on. The spheres, as perfect celestial bodies, would have been a powerful symbolic representation of the cosmic order they were tracking. An alternative, or perhaps complementary, theory sees them as deeply social and spiritual objects. Their placement near the homes of powerful chiefs suggests they were potent symbols of power, authority, and ethnic identity. The ability to command the labor required to create and move these massive orbs would have been a clear demonstration of a leader's influence and the community's cohesion. Furthermore, the sphere's perfect, unbroken form may have held profound spiritual significance, representing concepts of perfection, eternity, or the primordial world egg from which life emerges. They might have marked territorial boundaries, sacred pathways for ceremonial processions, or served as seats of power during important gatherings. Their silent, imposing presence would have conveyed a sense of timeless stability and communal strength to all who saw them arranged in the landscape. The true genius of the Dikwis culture may lie in this fusion of the practical and the symbolic. They demonstrated a sophisticated, almost industrial understanding of geology, geometry, and logistics to manufacture these objects, yet they deployed this technology not for war-making, but for creating artifacts that served to bind their society together through shared ceremony, shared knowledge of the skies, and shared awe. Unlike many of the other blueprints we have explored, the stone spheres were not a secret or a lost technology. They were a public declaration of a culture's capability and worldview left in the open for centuries. They stand as a powerful reminder that advanced understanding is not always about gears and gadgets. Sometimes it is encoded in the patient, perfect shape of a stone, a silent testament to a civilization's desire to harmonize their world with the perfect order of the cosmos. But while the Dikwis were aligning stone spheres with the heavens, another civilization was turning its genius inward, mastering a technology so fundamental to modern life that its presence in the Bronze Age seems almost anachronistic: sophisticated urban plumbing. Our journey now takes us to the island of Crete, to the magnificent palace of Knossos, the ceremonial and political heart of the Minoan civilization. When British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans began his excavations here in the year 1900, he uncovered more than just a labyrinth of corridors and vibrant frescoes. He revealed a hidden, subterranean network of such advanced hydraulic engineering that it rivals systems developed millennia later. The Minoans, a people who flourished over 3,500 years ago, were not just artists and traders. They were master plumbers, and their palace was a marvel of sanitation and water management that would not be consistently matched until the 19th century. The sheer scale and complexity of the system is what first astounds. Knossos was not a small village. It was a sprawling multi-story complex that likely housed thousands of people and required a constant, reliable flow of clean water for drinking, bathing, cooking, and ritual purification. To meet this demand, the Minoans engineered a comprehensive water supply network that began miles away in the surrounding mountains. They channeled spring water through a series of gravity-fed aqueducts made from carefully laid stone and terracotta pipes, bringing a steady stream of fresh water directly into the heart of the palace. This was a monumental logistical feat, requiring a precise understanding of topography and gradient to ensure the water flowed consistently without being too forceful or too weak. Once inside the palace walls, the water was distributed through an intricate web of pipes. These were not crude, hollowed-out logs or simple stone channels. The Minoans manufactured standardized, tapered terracotta pipes that fit snugly together. Their conical shape was a stroke of genius. The narrow end of one pipe was inserted into the wider end of the next, creating a tight, durable seal that minimized leaks and could withstand significant water pressure. These pipes ran beneath the floors and within the walls, supplying a series of pristine stone basins and fountains located throughout the complex, ensuring that fresh water was always accessible to the palace's inhabitants. Yet the supply of fresh water is only half the story. The Minoans displayed an even more remarkable understanding of public health in their management of wastewater. This is where their technology becomes truly breathtaking. The palace featured a fully integrated drainage system, a subterranean labyrinth of stone-lined conduits that collected used water and waste from various outlets. These channels were meticulously constructed with a gentle, consistent slope, allowing gravity to pull the effluent away from the living quarters and out of the palace, preventing the buildup of stagnant, disease-ridden water. The system was so well designed that it even included sedimentation tanks and settling basins, which allowed heavier solid waste to separate from the water before it continued its journey. A primitive but effective form of sewage treatment that prevented the main channels from becoming clogged. The crown jewel of this hydraulic achievement, however, was the discovery that has most captivated the modern imagination: the flushing toilet. In the Queen's Megaran, a suite of rooms believed to belong to a high-ranking royal, archaeologists found a small, private bathroom. Within it was a stone seat, unmistakably designed for sitting, with a hollowed-out center. This seat was connected directly to the palace's main drainage system by a cleverly designed terracotta pipe. Just outside the door was a small shaft. Researchers believed that a servant would pour water from a jug down this shaft, which would then flow through the pipe behind the wall, creating a surge that flushed the waste from the bowl down into the underground sewer and out of the palace. This was not some crude hole in the ground. It was a sophisticated, water-assisted sanitation device that provided privacy, hygiene, and comfort to its user, a luxury that would vanish from Europe for over 3,000 years after the collapse of Minoan civilization. What does this say about the Minoans as engineers and as a society? This level of investment in public health infrastructure reveals a culture with a profound, almost scientific understanding of the connection between sanitation and well-being. They recognize that the concentration of large numbers of people in an urban center required active management of waste to prevent the outbreak of disease. This suggests a highly organized central authority capable of planning and maintaining complex public works projects over generations. It speaks to a value system that prioritized communal health, cleanliness, and perhaps even a form of luxury that we rarely associate with the ancient world. The peaceful, artistic, and mercantile Minoans channeled their ingenuity not only into creating beautiful art, but into solving the most mundane yet critical problems of urban living, mastering the flow of water with a skill that would be lost to the Dark Ages and only rediscovered in the modern era. Their silent, flowing pipes beneath the palace floors are a powerful blueprint for a civilization that understood that true advancement lies not just in grand monuments, but in the health and dignity of everyday life. Imagine navigating the treacherous, fog-shrouded waters of the North Atlantic with no compass, no stars, and only a featureless gray sky above. For the Vikings, this was not a hypothetical challenge. It was the reality of their legendary voyages across thousands of miles of open ocean. Their success in reaching Iceland, Greenland, and even North America centuries before Columbus is one of history's great feats of exploration. But without a magnetic compass, which they wouldn't acquire until later, how did they manage such precise navigation under the famously overcast skies of the North? The answer may lie not in a complex instrument, but in a beautiful and mysterious crystal mentioned in their sagas, the Solarstein or Sunstone. The legend comes to us from the medieval Icelandic sagas, particularly the saga of Saint Olaf and the saga of Hroðulfr. In these stories, heroes are able to locate the sun's position on completely cloudy days or even after sunset by looking at the sky through a special gemstone. For centuries, this was dismissed by historians as pure myth, a charming folktale with no basis in reality. But in the late 1960s, a Danish archaeologist named Thorkild Ramsku proposed a revolutionary theory. He suggested the sunstone wasn't magical but optical. He believed it was a crystal capable of a specific physical phenomenon, detecting the polarization of sunlight. To understand how this works, picture light from the sun as a wave vibrating in all directions as it travels through space. When this light passes through Earth's atmosphere, it becomes polarized, meaning the waves align to vibrate in a more specific orientation. This pattern of polarization forms a series of concentric rings in the sky, centered directly on the sun, and it remains consistent even when the sun itself is completely hidden by cloud cover or fog. The human eye cannot detect this pattern, but certain crystals can. These are crystals with a property called birefringence. When you look through them, you see two images of whatever is behind them. By rotating a birefringent crystal and observing changes in the intensity of these double images, a skilled navigator could pinpoint the sun's hidden location with astonishing accuracy. The question then became which crystal. Ramsku and others pointed to one particularly compelling candidate, Iceland spar, a transparent variety of calcite that is both strongly birefringent and is found naturally in Scandinavia. A navigator would hold the clear calcite crystal up to the sky and slowly rotate it. When the crystal's axis aligned with the polarization pattern of the light, the two images seen through the stone would appear equally bright. When it was perpendicular to that pattern, one image would appear significantly darker than the other. By finding the point of equal brightness, the navigator could determine the axis of the polarization rings and thus triangulate the exact position of the invisible sun. This theory remained just that, a theory, until modern science put it to the test. In 2011, a team of researchers from France took a remarkable step. They studied a crystal found in an Elizabethan shipwreck off the coast of Alderney, identified as Iceland spar. Using this very crystal, they demonstrated in practical experiments that it could indeed be used to determine the sun's position with a precision of within a few degrees, even when the sun was well below the horizon. Then, in 2013, a team from Eötvös-Loránd University in Hungary took the experiment even further. They proposed a specific, highly efficient method of using the stone. They suggested a Viking navigator would have taken a series of measurements with the crystal at different points in the sky, creating a kind of mental map of the polarization pattern to cross-reference and pinpoint the sun's location with even greater accuracy. Their mathematical models showed this technique could be reliable to within a single degree of the true solar position. This wasn't just a laboratory trick, it was a decisive edge in the brutal world of North Atlantic seafaring. While other sailors were forced to wait for clear skies or simply guess their latitude, a Viking captain equipped with a sunstone could maintain his course with confidence. It allowed for more voyages during the spring and autumn months, when cloud cover was frequent but the seas were more navigable than in the storm-lashed winter. This technological advantage, though it fits in the palm of a hand, helps explain the incredible range and speed of Viking expansion. It was a tool that turned the impenetrable gray ceiling of the Arctic sky into a navigational chart. Yet, for all its brilliance, the Viking sunstone represents another classic historical mystery. We have the theory, we have the science, but we lack the definitive archaeological smoking gun. No sunstone has ever been found in a definitively Viking Age navigational context. The Alderney crystal is from a much later period. This absence fuels the skepticism of some historians who argue that while the science is sound, we cannot be certain the Vikings actually used it. They posit that expert Norse navigators, or leithsögumen, may have relied more on an immense library of accumulated knowledge, the flight paths of birds, the direction of swells, the color of the water, and the behavior of whales. The sunstone may have been just one tool in a vast mental toolkit, reserved for the most dire situations when all other signs failed. This duality is what makes the sunstone such a perfect symbol of the Viking spirit. It exists at the intersection of myth and hard science, of legendary sagas and practical wood and tar reality. Whether it was a commonly used tool or a rare and specialized secret, its feasibility proves that the Norse worldview was not one of superstition, but of profound empirical observation. They understood their environment with a clarity that allowed them to harness its most subtle properties, in this case, the very nature of light itself, to conquer a hemisphere. The sunstone is a reminder that sometimes the most advanced technology isn't a complex machine. It is a simple, elegant application of natural law, held in the hand of a person wise enough to know how to read the world. Now we turn from the tangible, sea-tested technology of the Vikings to a mystery that lives entirely within the pages of ancient texts, a blueprint that exists only in words but has sparked imaginations for centuries. Deep within the vast library of Sanskrit literature, in epics and technical manuals written millennia ago, are detailed descriptions of fantastic flying machines known as vimanas. These are not the simple chariots of the gods pulled by mythical creatures found in other cultures. The vimanas of ancient Indian texts are described with a startling level of technical specificity, featuring elaborate construction details, various propulsion systems, and even devastating weaponry. They present us with a compelling and deeply controversial question. Are we reading poetic mythology, or are we looking at the fragmented blueprints of a lost, advanced technology? The most famous and detailed accounts come from two primary sources. The first is the great epic, the Mahabharata, which dates back to around the 4th century BC. Here, vimanas are described in the context of epic warfare. We read about the demon King Maya's vimana, which is said to have had 12 wheels and was as large as a temple, and of other flying chariots that could become invisible and travel instantly to any location. But it is in the later Vaimanika Shastra, or the science of aeronautics, attributed to the sage Maharshi Bharadwaja, that the descriptions become almost clinical. This text, which some scholars date to the early 20th century but claim is based on much older traditions, reads less like a poem and more like an engineering manual. It categorizes vimanas into different types like the Sanyama and the Shakuna, and delves into astonishingly precise details about their construction. According to these texts, building a vimana was a complex affair involving specific and sometimes bizarre materials. The Vaimanika Shastra describes the use of various alloys such as Raudra Loha and Samaka Loha, which are unknown to modern metallurgy. It instructs on the preparation of these materials, including repeatedly heating and plunging them into specific oils or other liquids, a process that sounds analogous to modern tempering and quenching techniques for strengthening metal. The craftsmen who built these machines were called R-1 E63 Ak Macron R-Ak a term that implies both creator and protector, suggesting a highly specialized guild of engineer artisans. The airframes themselves were said to be made of light yet strong sheets of this specially treated metal, assembled with precision joints and fitted with viewing ports made of crystalline materials. The most captivating aspect of these descriptions is the proposed propulsion systems, which seem to leap straight out of science fiction. The texts speak of several methods far beyond simple combustion. One method involves the use of mercury vortex engines. The description suggests that mercury was heated in a specially designed chamber, causing it to rotate at great speed and generate a powerful lift or thrust. To a modern physicist, this brings to mind concepts like ion propulsion or the manipulation of electromagnetic fields. Another method described is the use of solar energy, captured through special mirrors and crystals to power the craft. Perhaps the most enigmatic are the references to antikythera, a term that translates to inner absorbing or internal gripping, which some interpret as a form of anti-gravity technology, a way to manipulate the very fabric of gravity itself to achieve levitation and incredible speed. This technological description extends to the Vimana's offensive and defensive capabilities, which are nothing short of terrifying. The texts describe an arsenal of weapons with uncanny parallels to modern warfare. There are mentions of dikpola, devices that could disorient enemy pilots and disrupt their senses. There is the Shabdakheda, a weapon that could locate and track other aircraft through sound. Most dramatic are the descriptions of energy weapons, the Agniastra, which released a column of fire, the Vajra, which delivered a powerful electrical discharge like a lightning bolt, and weapons that could summon violent storms or release projectiles that sought out the sound of enemy engines. These are not the clubs and arrows of typical ancient warfare. They are the weapons of aerial dominance and mass destruction. This level of detail inevitably leads to a fierce debate. Are these accounts evidence of a real, lost ancient civilization that possessed aviation technology? Proponents of this ancient astronaut or lost technology theory argue that the descriptions are too specific and too mechanically coherent to be pure fantasy. They point to the fact that many modern inventions, from airplanes to rockets, were prefigured in science fiction literature long before they were built. Could the Vimana texts be a similar case, but from a forgotten past? They suggest that these could be distorted memories of a real, advanced prehistoric culture, or even evidence of contact with an extraterrestrial civilization that shared its technology, which was then recorded in mythologized form. Mainstream historians and Indologists, however, offer a profoundly different and deeply symbolic interpretation. They argue that these texts are brilliant works of religious and philosophical speculation, not technical manuals. In this view, the Vimana is a metaphysical concept. It is a vehicle for the soul's journey towards spiritual liberation, a symbolic representation of the different states of consciousness one must achieve to reach enlightenment. The intricate descriptions of its parts are allegories for the components of the human body and mind. The powerful weapons are not literal, but represent the spiritual tools one must wield to defeat inner demons like ego, desire, and ignorance. The ability to fly and become invisible symbolizes the transcendent state of a yogi who has mastered their physical form and can achieve anything through the power of consciousness. From this perspective, the texts are not about physical engineering, but about the engineering of the self. The truth likely lies in a fascinating fusion of these two extremes. It is entirely possible that the ancient Indian sages, who were unparalleled observers of nature and masters of astronomy, were engaging in a form of speculative science. They saw birds fly, they understood the principles of wind and leverage, and they used their immense intellectual creativity to imagine how a human might achieve the same feat. They applied their known world of metals, chemicals, and energy sources like mercury, sunlight, and fire to these theoretical constructs. The Vimana texts could be seen as the world's first and most elaborate thought experiment in aerospace engineering. a testament to the power of the human mind to conceive of technologies thousands of years before the materials science and physics could possibly make them a reality. This ancient speculation has had a direct and powerful influence on the modern world, particularly on the phenomenon of UFOs and ancient astronaut theories. When Western writers in the 20th century began translating these Sanskrit texts, they were astounded. The descriptions of silent, disc-shaped aircraft that could hover, shoot beams of light, and travel at incredible speeds provided a ready-made historical framework for the flying saucers people were beginning to report. Authors like Erich von Däniken, in his influential book Chariots of the Gods, argued that the Vimanas were not imaginative speculations but were literal records of extraterrestrial visitors, and that the gods of the ancient epics were actually astronauts from other worlds. This idea captured the global imagination, weaving the Vimana firmly into the fabric of modern pop culture and alternative history. The enduring power of the Vimana story, therefore, is not necessarily in proving ancient flight, but in what it reveals about the timeless human drive to look to the sky and dream of breaking free from the confines of the earth. Whether they were spiritual allegories, theoretical engineering, or distorted memories of real events, these texts represent a peak of creative and intellectual ambition. They show us a civilization that dared to think on a grand technological scale, blending their sophisticated understanding of the material world with their deep spiritual yearnings. The Vimanas remain the ultimate thought-provoking blueprints, challenging us to decide where the line lies between an ancient myth and a forgotten history, and reminding us that the desire to soar among the clouds is an ambition as old as humanity itself. However, the mystery of the Rongorongo script deepens when we consider its possible origins. The most baffling question is one of timing. The prevailing archaeological evidence suggests that Easter Island was first settled by Polynesians around 1200 CE. For centuries, they lived in isolation, developing their unique culture and their famous moai statues. Yet, there is no evidence of writing anywhere else in Polynesia. So where did Rongorongo come from? It appears to have emerged suddenly and fully formed, a system of writing with no clear evolutionary predecessors on the island itself. This sudden appearance has led to one of the most tantalizing and controversial theories, that the script was not an independent invention but was influenced by an outside source. Some researchers have pointed to a remarkable, though highly debated, potential connection. The glyphs of Rongorongo do not look like the alphabetic scripts of Europe. Instead, they are largely pictographic and ideographic, with many glyphs representing recognizable forms like birds, fish, plants, and ceremonial objects. To some epigraphers, this style bears a striking, though not identical, resemblance to certain ancient writing systems from thousands of miles away. A few daring scholars have noted visual parallels with the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt and even the early scripts of the Indus Valley civilization. The most compelling, yet still speculative, link is to the ancient Chinese script, where some characters for common objects like birds or celestial bodies share a similar visual shorthand. This opens up a breathtaking possibility. Could a ship from a sophisticated, literate culture have reached Easter Island long before the Europeans, introducing the concept of writing to the isolated Rapa Nui people? Perhaps a storm-blown Chinese junk or a vessel from a South American culture with some form of proto-writing made landfall. The Rapa Nui, already master carvers, may have then adapted these foreign symbols into their own unique system, infusing them with their own language and worldview. This theory, while lacking concrete proof, would solve the riddle of the script's seemingly spontaneous emergence. It suggests that Easter Island was not nearly as isolated as we once believed, and that it might have been a distant, final recipient of a flicker of cultural knowledge passed across the vastness of the Pacific. Yet, even if the seed of the idea came from elsewhere, the Rongorongo script itself is a masterpiece of indigenous innovation. The few surviving texts are not haphazard scratches. They are works of art and precise craftsmanship. The glyphs were not written with ink, but meticulously incised into tablets of wood, using a sharp obsidian flake or a shark's tooth. The scribes employed a unique and ingenious technique called reverse boustrophedon. This means that to read the text, you start at the bottom left-hand corner of the tablet, read a line from left to right, and then when you reach the end, you must physically rotate the entire tablet 180 degrees to continue reading the next line, which is now upside down relative to the first. This method is incredibly efficient, allowing the scribe to continue carving without ever lifting the tool from the wood, creating a continuous flowing line of text. This sophisticated layout alone indicates a long tradition of writing, not a clumsy first attempt. But what secrets do these meticulously carved texts hold? This is the central, frustrating enigma. Without a Rosetta Stone, a parallel text in a known language, decipherment has proven nearly impossible. Early European missionaries, upon seeing the tablets, believed they were purely ceremonial or represented pagan incantations. Some modern researchers, however, propose a far more complex function. The repetitive structure of the glyphs, with certain sequences appearing again and again, suggests they may be mnemonic devices. In this theory, the tablets were not meant to be read word for word like a modern book. Instead, they served as prompts for highly trained oral reciters, who would use the glyphs to recall vast amounts of memorized information, genealogies, creation myths, astronomical knowledge, or even agricultural cycles. The tablet itself was a storage device, but the true text lived in the mind of the reciter. This interpretation transforms our view of Rapa Nui society. It implies the existence of a scholarly or priestly class, the Maori Rongorongo, or experts in the script, who were the guardians of the island's entire cultural and intellectual heritage. They were the living libraries. The catastrophic population collapse following European contact, driven by disease and slave raids, would have disproportionately affected these learned individuals. When they died, the key to unlocking the script died with them. The beautifully carved tablets were left behind, but the living knowledge they were designed to trigger vanished forever. The Rongorongo script, therefore, stands as a heartbreakingly poignant blueprint. It is not just an undeciphered writing system, it is the ghost of an entire advanced intellectual tradition, a silent testament to a sophisticated society that understood its history, its world, and its place in the cosmos well enough to want to carve it into wood for eternity, only for its voice to be tragically silenced before it could ever be heard by the outside world. Now, let's step away from the sea and into the blistering heat of the ancient Persian desert, where survival depended on a brilliant and counterintuitive feat of engineering. Imagine a vast, sun-scorched landscape where summer temperatures could soar to unbearable heights. In such an environment, the very idea of ice would seem like a fantastical dream. Yet, over 2,000 years ago, Persian engineers turned this dream into a stunning reality. They didn't just find ways to stay cool, they mastered the art of creating and preserving winter's chill in the middle of summer, and they did it all without a single watt of electricity. Their secret weapon was a magnificent structure known as the yakchul, a word that simply means ice pit, but describes one of the most effective and elegant refrigeration systems ever devised. At first glance, a yakchul looks like something from a science fiction novel. It is a massive beehive-shaped dome made from a unique, waterproof mortar called saruj. This mortar was a special mixture of sand, clay, egg whites, lime, goat hair, and ash, which, when dried, became incredibly strong and highly resistant to heat transfer. These domes could rise as high as 60 feet, and beneath them lay a vast subterranean storage space, often extending down another 30 or 40 feet into the cooler earth. But the dome itself is only the most visible part of a complex and sophisticated system. The entire structure was strategically positioned, often near a water source or a specially constructed underground canal called a kanat, which would channel water from the nearby mountains straight to the Yakchel's doorstep. The process of making ice is where the true genius reveals itself. It didn't require magic, it required a profound understanding of physics. During the cold desert nights of winter, channeled water was released into shallow, rectangular pools that were positioned north of the main dome. These pools were strategically shaded by high walls, ensuring they remained in the shadow for most of the day. As the frigid night air descended upon them, the water would begin to freeze. The shallow depth of the pools allowed the water to freeze much more quickly than it would in a deep body of water. By morning, a thin layer of ice would have formed. Workers would break this ice and collect it, repeating the process throughout the winter to amass a huge stockpile. But the greater challenge wasn't making the ice, it was keeping it from melting through the long, scorching summer months. This is where the Yakchel's architectural design became nothing short of miraculous. The ice was stored in the deep, underground pit. The massive dome above it acted as a superb insulator, its thick sarouge walls deflecting the intense heat of the sun. The structure often featured a series of ventilation shafts, or badgers, ancient wind catchers that would funnel the prevailing desert breeze down into the depths of the storage chamber. As this wind entered the cooler space, it would drop in temperature, creating a continuous cycle of convective cooling that further stabilized the interior climate. The combination of subterranean placement, brilliant insulation, and passive air conditioning created a permanent microclimate where temperatures could remain near freezing all year round. The impact of this technology on Persian society was profound. A Yakchel was not a luxury, it was a cornerstone of community life and public health. It allowed for the long-term storage of not just ice but also food. Perishables like dairy, meat, and fruit could be preserved, drastically reducing waste and preventing famine. It enabled the creation of chilled delicacies like falude, a refreshing sorbet made with thin noodles and rose water, a dessert that is still enjoyed in Iran today. More importantly, it provided a reliable source of clean, cold water and ice to help people cope with the extreme heat, preventing dehydration and heat stroke. These structures were so effective that many of them still stand today, centuries after they were built, their domes silently dotting the Iranian landscape as crumbling yet powerful monuments to a civilization that didn't fight the harsh climate, but learned to work with it in the most intelligent way imaginable. The Yakchel is a perfect historical blueprint, demonstrating that true advancement isn't always about creating more power, but about understanding our environment with such clarity that we can harness its most basic principles to create something extraordinary. While the Antikythera Mechanism rightfully astounds us as a singular marvel, the discovery of another, far more fragmented device suggests this kind of sophisticated technology might not have been a one-off miracle, but part of a broader tradition of ancient scientific instrumentation. In the ruins of an ancient shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, we found our first glimpse of this lost world. But decades earlier, and on the hallowed ground of Olympia itself, archaeologists unearthed something that might be a second, quieter whisper from that same advanced chapter in history. During excavations at the site of the original Olympic Games, researchers recovered a simple, unassuming lump of heavily corroded bronze. For a long time, it was catalogued as just another artifact, a curious but unidentifiable piece of ancient scrap. It wasn't until much later, when scientists applied modern X-ray scanning technology, that the truth began to emerge. Hidden within that corroded shell were the faint but unmistakable traces of gear wheels. This was not a decorative piece, it was the mangled remains of a complex mechanism, a device that has since been tentatively dubbed the Olympia device, or the ancient Greek computer from Olympia. The surviving fragments are heartbreakingly sparse, offering just a tantalizing glimpse rather than a complete picture. We see a system of at least 4 or 5 interlocking bronze gears, precisely cut with triangular teeth, mounted within what was likely a rectangular wooden frame. The craftsmanship and design principles appear strikingly similar to those of the Antikythera Mechanism, suggesting they might have emerged from the same school of Hellenistic engineering or shared a common technological ancestry. This is the crucial implication of the Olympia find. It powerfully suggests that the Antikythera Mechanism was not a lone, freak invention. There may have been workshops producing these intricate analog computers, and they may have been more widespread than we ever imagined. But what was its purpose? Without the wealth of dials and inscriptions that helped decode the Antikythera Mechanism, the Olympia device's function remains a subject of educated guesswork. However, its discovery at Olympia, the most important pan-Hellenic religious and athletic sanctuary in the ancient world, provides a major clue. The most compelling theory is that this was a specialized calendar computer dedicated to the one thing that mattered most at that site: timing the Olympic Games. The Games were not held on a simple annual cycle. They operated on a complex 4-year period known as an Olympiad. Keeping this calendar straight across the numerous city-states of Greece was essential for organizing the events, ensuring the sacred truce, and allowing athletes and spectators to travel. The device could have been used to calculate this Olympiad cycle. Furthermore, it might have synchronized this 4-year period with the lunar months and the solar year, ensuring that the religious ceremonies associated with the Games were held on the correct astrologically and astronomically significant dates. It could have been a dedicated, portable timekeeper for the judges and priests of Olympus, a mechanical embodiment of the sacred schedule that governed the most famous event in the ancient world. The existence of even a fragmentary second device forces a dramatic shift in our perspective on ancient technology. A single discovery can be dismissed as an anomaly, a brilliant fluke. But a second find, however incomplete, begins to form a pattern. It implies a tradition. It suggests that the knowledge required to design and build these gearwork computers was known to a community of scholars and craftsmen. There were likely prototypes, instruction manuals now lost to time, and apprentices learning the art of precision gear cutting. The Antikythera Mechanism suddenly seems less like a lonely spaceship that fell from the future and more like the most spectacularly preserved example of a known, if elite, class of scientific instrument. The Olympia device, in its silent, fragmentary way, is perhaps even more revolutionary than its famous counterpart. It doesn't just show us a single advanced machine. It hints at an entire lost industry of scientific technology, a world where the line between Bronze Age tools and analog computation was far blurrier than our history books have ever told us. While the Yakchul showcases a mastery of earthly physics to defy the desert heat, the ancient Maya turned their genius skyward, developing a system for measuring time itself with a precision that borders on the supernatural. Isolated in the jungles of Mesoamerica, without telescopes, metal tools, or any concept of the wheel, the Maya crafted a calendar system of such breathtaking complexity and accuracy that it remains one of humanity's most stunning intellectual achievements. This was not a single calendar, but a sophisticated interlocking system of cycles, a grand cosmic clock that tracked the movements of the heavens with a precision that would not be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years. The true genius of the Maya was their mathematical foundation. While much of the world was struggling with clunky Roman numerals, the Maya had perfected the concept of zero, a placeholder that revolutionized calculation, and used an elegant Weidsimal or base 20 number system. They represented numbers using a simple combination of dots for ones and bars for fives, a system so efficient they could perform complex astronomical calculations that would be daunting even with modern Arabic numerals. This mathematical prowess was the engine that drove their entire calendrical machine, allowing them to compute vast cycles of time and synchronize them with celestial events with pinpoint accuracy. This machine was comprised of 3 primary gears. The first and most familiar was the HRB objective. This was the solar or civil calendar of 365 days, used for regulating agriculture and daily life. It was divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus a short, ominous 5-day period known as WOYB adjective, considered a time of bad luck and potential chaos. While the HRB adjective was close to the true solar year, it was the second calendar that reveals the Mayas' obsession with precision. The TZOLK adjective IN, or sacred round, was a 260-day cycle formed by the intermeshing of 13 numbers with 20-day names. This wasn't tied to any obvious astronomical cycle. Instead, it was used for divination, ritual, and determining the auspiciousness of days, forming the sacred heartbeat of Maya spiritual life. The real magic, however, happened when these two cycles were combined. The HRB adjective and the TZOLK adjective IN would run concurrently like two interlocking wheels of different sizes. Any specific date required a combination of a day from each calendar. The two cycles would realign and repeat every 52 years, a period known as the calendar round. This was a foundational cycle in Maya culture, marking a time of great renewal and often commemorated by the construction of new monuments and temples. But even this 52-year cycle was not the end of their temporal ambition. For recording historical events and tracking truly vast stretches of time, the Maya used the long count. This was a linear count of days from a mythical starting point, which we correlate to August 11th, 3014 BC in our Gregorian calendar. The long count expressed dates using a place value notation that could stretch back for millions of years, revealing a cosmic perspective that thought in epochs, not just generations. This entire apparatus was not created in an ivory tower. It was meticulously calibrated to the rhythms of the universe. Their solar year calculation was far more accurate than the Julian calendar used in Europe at the time. But their most stunning feats involved other celestial bodies. By carefully observing Venus, which they associated with the god Kukulkan, they calculated its 584-day synodic period, the time it takes to reappear at the same point in the sky, with an error of just 2 hours every 500 years. They could predict its appearances as both the morning and evening star with uncanny reliability, and these events were deeply woven into their warfare and ritual. They also tracked the cycles of Mars, Jupiter, and with profound accuracy, the lunar cycle. Their estimate of the average length of a lunation is precise to within about 30 seconds of the modern value. Perhaps their most awe-inspiring achievement was their prediction of eclipses. They identified the approximately 6,585-day cycle of the eclipse season, allowing their priests astronomers to foresee these terrifying events and perform the necessary ceremonies to ensure the sun or moon would return. This system was more than just a tool for prediction. It was the very fabric of their reality. It reflected a worldview where time was not a linear progression but a sacred, cyclical force, and where the duty of humanity was to maintain the cosmic order through ritual and calendar keeping. The movements of the gods in the sky directly dictated the actions of kings and commoners on Earth. The famous conclusion of a long count cycle in 2012, which sparked so much modern fascination and misinformation, was never prophesied as an end, but merely the turning over of an immense odometer, a time of great transformation and renewal. The Maya calendar system stands as the ultimate testament to the power of naked eye observation, patient record keeping over centuries, and a mathematical intellect that could discern the deep, harmonic patterns of the cosmos. They sought to harmonize human existence with the grand, eternal cycles of the universe, and in doing so, they left behind a blueprint of time that continues to humble and inspire us to this day. From the intricate celestial gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the silent, enduring defiance of the Delhi Iron Pillar, each of these 25 blueprints forces us to confront a humbling and exhilarating truth. Our story is far richer, far more complex, and far more mysterious than we ever learned in school. We've journeyed from the bottom of the Mediterranean to the high Andes, from the deserts of Persia to the jungles of Central America, and at every turn we've found evidence of sophistication that seems to defy its own time. These are not mere anomalies or lucky guesses. They are the fingerprints of lost sciences, of forgotten schools of engineering, and of cultures that viewed the world through a lens we are only beginning to comprehend. They challenge the very linear narrative of human progress, suggesting instead a history of fits and starts, of brilliant peaks of knowledge that were scaled and then abandoned, their secrets sinking into the sands of time, war, and societal collapse. The Greek fire that could burn on water, the Roman concrete that grows stronger in the sea, the Viking sunstone that read the hidden sun, these were not magic. They were applied science, born from a profound and intimate observation of the natural world, a testament to the universal human drive to solve problems, to understand the cosmos, and to leave a mark that would endure. So now we turn the question over to you. Which of these enigmatic blueprints captures your imagination the most? Does the precise astronomical genius of the Maya calendar make you reconsider ancient wisdom? Or does the eerie, uncanny resemblance of the Sakara bird to a modern glider spark your curiosity about lost flight? Perhaps the sheer physical impossibility of moving the moe or fitting the stones of Sacsayhuaman leaves you in awe of the power of human collaboration. We want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which mystery you find the most compelling and why. If this journey into the puzzles of the past has left you hungry for more, you're in the right place. This channel is dedicated to unearthing history's greatest enigmas, from sunken cities and unbreakable codes to forgotten inventors and unexplained artifacts. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the shadows of history. The past is not a closed book. It's a living, breathing puzzle, and together we can continue to piece together its most astonishing secrets. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next adventure.